All right, Javosai, good morning. Such a zechus, Baruch Hashem, to be able to learn the daf together here in Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh. Absolutely incredible and beautiful. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors. To thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor for Tafshin Pei Hey, the Tilson. Thank you, David. It's perfect. Thank you so much. Tilson Mishpacha of Eretz Yisrael for dedicating all the Shumrin's Rashos this year as a zechus for besuros, tovos for Am Yisroel. Our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Ira Miriam Grossman, in honor of the SOTC Yarchei Kallah trip to Eretz Yisrael. Shkach to the Grossmans, wonderful to see Ira. And I will say with that, let us begin. Of course, as always, we dedicate our learning in the zechus of our precious hostages. May Hashem bring them home b'shalom and b'karov, and in the zechus of our holy soldiers, may they be successful. B'chol ma'asei yedehem. I will say with that, let us begin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol niyeh b'dvaro. Amen. Perfect. All right, I will say, let's begin. Today's daf is Samech Daled. Right? Yeah, Samech Daled. Good. Correct? Good? All right, fantastic. All right, so we left off. I don't know, when was the last daf we did? About a week ago. Feels like, all right, Baruch Hashem on, thank you. Okay. All right, so it says we're picking up on the bottom of Samech Gimel Amud Beis 63b. We left off Amrav Yehuda Amarav, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines up from the bottom. We'll say some really incredible Gemaras ahead of us today. Amrav Yehuda Amarav. Here we go. Amrav Yehuda Amarav. Yotin hayu Yisrael ba'avodos kochavim she'in b'mamish. Klal Yisrael always knew that avodah zara, there wasn't really anything to it. But this is such a profound Gemara, because a lot of times when we see these sugyas and we see these Gemaras about avodah zara, and we wonder to ourselves, like, what is going on with this? How could it be that Klal Yisrael is worshipping avodah zara? So Yehuda says in the name of Rab, the truth is, Klal Yisrael knew that avodah zara, there's nothing really to it. So why did they worship it? So why do they worship avodah zara? Avodah zara, was a matir. Avodah zara was what enabled Klal Yisrael to go ahead and, in this case, engage in immorality. Or to say a little bit differently, Rav Shmuel Hirsch brings down, he says, what is the fundamental difference between avodah zara and avodas Hashem? Wherein lies the distinction between idolatry and the service of the Ribono Shalom? And Rav Shmuel says something amazing. He says, in Yiddishkeit, the avodah is to make ourselves in Hashem's image. Avodah zara is make God in your image. What avodah zara says is, decide what you want to do in life, and then create a framework which justifies all the different things that you want. So I'll say, that's a lot of how, contemporarily, a lot of how all of these isms, right, begin. Right? All of these isms begin by people deciding that they want a different code of morality, they want to engage in a whole bunch of different things, so they create a system. You good? Good. They create a system. They create a system which allows them ultimately to do the things that they want to do. The whole kunz of avodas Hashem is that life doesn't begin by deciding what do I want. Life begins by deciding what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Like the Ramchal says in his introduction. The Ramchal says that there's a fundamental shayla that a yid has to ask himself. What's the fundamental shayla? Ma chovaso ba'olamo. What is my obligation in this world? Not what I want to do when I grow up. Not what makes me happy. Not how do I feel like, what do I want out of life. What is my obligation? Because as a yid, I have a very simple obligation, which is to serve the Ribono Shel Olam and to fit myself into his box, not to go ahead and fit him into my box. Fundamentally so. So if he says in the name of Rab, the entire kunz of avodah zara was to justify a whole system of errant behaviors. Incredible. Master Misharshia. So I will say, see, here's what's interesting. So according to Yehuda Rav, the whole chap is, Yidden never really believed in avodah zara. They never really wanted avodah zara. That's not what they wanted, right? At the end of the day, what they simply wanted was arayos. They just needed a system which would allow for them to go ahead and do what they wanted. So now comes Master Misharshia. So Misharshia is a kasha. B'schor b'neihem is b'chosam. Bar Melazar, k'adam shishlo ga'aguin al b'no. So here's the issue. Yet again, the pasuk describes the Jews' connection to Avodah Zarah, and the way it describes it is B'zechor b'neim mizbechoseim. Rabbi Lazar says that the Jews loved Avodah Zarah like a father loves his son. So that seems to be a pretty intense connection to Avodah Zarah. So what are you talking about? So the Gemara says, no, basar da'aviku bey. You're right. See, in the beginning, when we first started worshiping Avodah Zarah, Avodah Zarah was only a mechanism to allow us to do what we really wanted to do. But we really didn't believe it. We didn't believe it. It was just a matter, just allow us to do. Then what happens? Spend enough time doing anything, and what occurs? It grows on you. It grows on you. So basar da'aviku means after we became attached to Avodah Zarah, then unfortunately, again, we really actually began to believe in it. Tashma, v'nasati pigrechem al pigrei gilulechem. Amar Eliyahu Atzadik. So let's listen to this. Amar Eliyahu Atzadik hayu mechazer al tefuchei rav shebiyushalayim. So we'll say Eliyahu Atzadik. This is actually very interesting. See, Eliyahu Atzadik, which is also Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Atzadik was going ahead and literally helping out those who were bloated by famine in Yerushalayim. So Yerushalayim again was plagued by famine. This is when we were under siege. So Eliyahu Hanavi was going ahead and helping out all of those who were suffering from famine. One time he came across a child, and the child Nebuch was bloated from hunger, and like laying in a garbage dump. Eliyahu says to the child, tell me, child, what family are you from? Amar lo mishpacha plonis, and the child said, I'm from a particular family. Amar lo klum nishtayer me'osa mishpacha. So Eliyahu said, I'm surprised. I thought that entire family had died out. Amar lo lav chutz mimeni. And this child said, I am the last remaining member of this family. Amar lo imani malamdecha davar sha'ata chaybo atalamad. So Eliyahu says to the boy, he says, tell me, if I'm willing to teach you something, right, that will save your life, are you willing to learn it? So the child will say, Amar lo hein. The boy said, of course. Who doesn't want to live? Amar b'chol yom Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So Eliyahu Navi says to the boy, he says, all you need to do is every single day say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Just say that every day and you'll live. Amar lo, top of Samach Daled. Amar lo has. So the boy said to Eliyahu Navi, listen to this. The boy said to Eliyahu Navi, shh, has means be quiet. The boy didn't want Eliyahu Navi to say the name of Hashem. The boy, he believed in Avodah Zarah. He didn't want anything other than Avodah Zarah. Shalo haskir b'shem Hashem, shalo limdu aviv v'imo. So ultimately, again, so can you imagine this? What I was saying? Eliyahu Navi is telling this boy who's dying of hunger, right? Child, I'm going to teach you something that's going to save your life. Just say after me, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And the boy was so conditioned to worship idolatry from his parents that when Eliyahu Navi said Hashem, the boy didn't recognize the name. He's like, that's not our God. We worship a different God. And he silenced Eliyahu Hanavi. What did he do? Miyad hotzi rasa mecheko umechabko menashka. The little boy took out the Avodah Zarah from his shirt, and he began to go ahead and kiss it and hug it. Ad shenifka kreso v'nafla yirasa la'aretz v'nafal hu aleha. Until ultimately, again, he died from famine. Literally translated, his stomach exploded. Right, his Avodah Zarah fell to the ground, and he fell on top of his Avodah Zarah. L'kaim ha'shenemar v'nasati pigrechem al pigrei gilulechem. So we'll say. So again, you see from here that again the Jews were very connected to Avodah Zarah. So how can you say that we just worshipped Avodah Zarah for utilitarian purposes? Clearly, we believed in it. To which the Gemara says, no, basar da'aviku bey. As we said before, originally when we first started with Avodah Zarah, it was only to justify an errant lifestyle. But once we got into it, and ultimately, again, we clung to it, we clinged to it. We became very connected to it and actually began to believe in it. I'll just point out something very interesting. If you notice, by the way, how does it refer to Eliyahu over here? It refers to him as Eliyahu HaTzadik. That's not the normal appellation, right? Normally it's Eliyahu Hanavi. So what's the pshat? We'll say, obviously, calling someone a tzaddik is a higher level than Navi. So what's the pshat? Because what is Eliyahu doing over here? What is he doing here? He's helping another Jew. So it's great to be a Navi, but it's even greater to be a tzaddik. And how do you become a tzaddik? When you help your fellow Yid. That's what it means to be a tzaddik. People often think that zechus means to work on yourself. Zechus means to go ahead and work on your own ruchnius, which is absolutely true. Every person has to work on their own ruchnius. But Eliyahu Hanavi becomes Eliyahu HaTzadik. When he sees a child in distress, he stops everything and he lends a helping hand. The path to personal piety, the path to righteousness, the path to zechus is not one that is paved by working on oneself. The path to zechus is paved when you take the time to help out the other. Incredible. Tashma. Vaizaku b'kol gadol Hashem Elokehem. My Amar. So we'll say the pasuk says they'll call out in a great voice to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, their God. What is being said? Rabbi Amar, Rabbi Yehuda, V'tim Rabbi Yonasan. Bye. We'll say this is a ridiculous Gemara. So listen to this. The Klal Yisrael called out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they said bye. What's bye? Bye is oi. Woe to us, woe to us. They were lamenting the Yetzer Hara. And they were saying that the Yetzer Hara, specifically for Avodah Zarah, is so incredibly overwhelming. So overwhelming. And it's almost as if we don't really have any ability to combat it. It's this Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah that has destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Caused the death of tzaddikim. And we've been exiled from our land. And still this Yetzer Hara mamish is dancing between us. Klum yavisalan ela lekabule be agura lo ihu ba'inon v'lo agre ba'inon. So also listen to this. So Chazal Davin and Sechach Baruch Hu. The only reason you gave us the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah is to get schar. Sechach Baruch Hu, I'll make you a deal. Make a deal. You keep the Yetzer Hara, and we're willing to forego the schar. So you see this, by the way, you see examples of this. We saw Gemaras like this in Maseches Brachos. If you remember again, where ultimately again there were tzaddikim who were suffering, and they said, "Cholish Baruch Hu, the only reason you visit suffering upon us is to give us schar. You know what? You keep the suffering, you can keep the schar also. You gave us a Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. Thank you. To get schar, why don't you keep the Yetzer Hara? And the truth is, again, we're happy to forego the schar. So the Gemara says, Basar da'aviku be, Yasri tlasiam v'tanisa, Boy rachami, v'nafalu piska mirikia dahavikasev ba emes. Both say second wide line. So Chazal, they decided that the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah had just become too destructive and gotten too out of hand. So they fasted for 3 days. And after the fast for 3 days, a petak, a little note came down from Shamayim. And what did it say on the little petak? What did it say on the note? Emes, truth, which was a way of saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying to the rabbis who were davening, I heard your request, what you're saying is good, and I understand that it is time to remove the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. Am Rabbi Chanina, Shma Mina, Chosama HaKadosh Baruch Hu Emes. See from here ultimately again that the signet or the signature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Emes. That the Rebbeinu Shalom again, the Rebbeinu Shalom is Emes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends down this note from Shemayim, Emes, meaning, okay, what you're saying is good, what you're saying is correct, and now at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give in to their request. So I'll say, so what happened? Here we go. Nafak keguria denura mi beis kodesh HaKadoshim. The Yetzer Hara for, you're supposed to get ready for this. The Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. The Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah came running out of the Holy of Holies. So remember again, just so you understand, this was during the times of the Beis HaMikdash. So we'll say again, during the times of the So first of all, just in general, how incredible is it to learn a Gemara about the Beis HaMikdash when we sit here together in Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh, just a few steps away from where the Bayis Shlishi is going. People say, do you understand? If we just had another couple of hours of sleep, you'd be falling off your chair right now, right? All right? It's just seeing like, so do you understand what it means to be learning Torah together in Yerushalayim? Do you understand what this means? Do you understand what Jews throughout the millennia would have given to be in this spot? How many tears were cried throughout the ages for a Jew who would have given anything just for a glimpse of Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh, just to see it. And here, not only are we seeing it, not only are we staying in it, but we're learning Torah here. So now again, Mamish the Gemara. So what happens? So they davened for the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah to be removed. So the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah, let's listen to this. So the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah now is going to be removed from Klal Yisrael. So what happens? It took on the form of a fiery lion cub. A fiery lion cub. And that fiery lion cub ran out from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It ran out from the Holy of Holies. So we'll say, Amar Luhu Navi Navi Yisrael, Hainu Yitzra da Avodah Zarah. That's it. That's it, right over there, that fiery lion cub. That is the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. That's it. That's it. Grab it. The Gemara says, Ba'adi de katav sila ishtamit bein semine, as they were wrestling. Can you imagine this? As they were wrestling the Avodah Zarah, the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah, the fiery lion cub. So what happened? A hair came off of the lion cub. Va'azo kala ba'arba mea parsi, and again the lion cub began to cry out. Amru hechina avid. So now the Chazal said, what should we do? Because again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has rachamim on everything. Dilma mishmaya merachame aleh. Maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take compassion on the lion cub because it's in pain, right? One of its hairs fell out. Maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take compassion on it and release it. Amar le'navi shajua bedura da'avra v'kisua ba'avra d'shayef kala. Quick, grab it, put it in a cauldron of lead, cover it with a covering of lead, because that'll mute the cries of the lion cub. Dichsev vayomer zos harasha v'yashlech osal tol cha'ifa v'yashlech chasavina alferes apia. So I just want to pause here for just a second. Pause here. There's absolutely no way we're getting through this entire daf. It doesn't matter. It's okay. It's okay. It's not a rush. We always make it through. We always make it through. So I say, so again, I just want to understand where does the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah reside? Where does it live? Where does it live? It lives in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Because we'll say at the end of the day, sometimes all of us have our Yetzer Haras, right? We all have our wants, our desires, our proclivities, our lusts, our inclinations, and we think that those things are tameh, and we think that those things come from an impure place. They don't. They come from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. They come from the Holy of Holies. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us our struggles, not to bring us down, but just the opposite, to give us the opportunity to work on ourselves and to lift ourselves up. Your wants, your desires, your lusts, your proclivities, your Yetzer Haras, those are Kodesh Kadoshim, because it's those struggles that will make you the greatest version of yourself. It's the ability to transcend those things that makes us us. Do you know what life without struggle is called? Life without struggle is called? Death. Right? You're dead. You're dead, right? If you're not struggling with something, chances are you're dead, or just totally asleep at the wheel of life, right? But same thing, right? Same idea, either way, right? Lemaisa will say, our Yetzer Hara is Kodesh Kadoshim. The Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, it doesn't live in Gehenna, right? It doesn't live in Galus. It lives in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, because it is the holiest of the holy, because it was the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah that gave us the opportunity. See, the challenge of our Yetzer Haras is that, we'll say, if we're honest, such a good time to be honest, we don't fight hard enough. We just don't fight hard enough. We just give in. Or when the battle becomes a little bit too acute, we just yield. We just surrender. We don't have to surrender. We never have to surrender. We are so much stronger than we give ourselves credit for. So the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, like every single other Yetzer Hara that we possess, doesn't live in Gehenna. It lives in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Because the challenges we have, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives them to us only to allow ourselves to become the best version of ourselves. And that's what I will say. That's why when they're wrestling the lion cub, so to speak, the lion cub of the Avodah Zarah, and the little hair falls off, and they're worried about HaKadosh Baruch Hu having Rachmanis, because the Yibam Shalom loves the Yetzer Hara. Sounds strange. Why does he love the Yetzer Hara? Because it keeps us moving. Because he created it. Because it will say, the Yetzer Hara is the Ribono Shel Olam's greatest creation, because it is the Yetzer Hara that is the engine of growth. So in that moment when the Yetzer Hara is being wrestled and it lets out a cry of pain, so it's almost as if Chazal are concerned, maybe Chashbaruch Hu is going to take Rachmanos on the Yetzer Hara and allow it to come back to its former glory. And I will say, the things we contend with, they're not working against us. They're working for us. Those challenges that are there are only there to make us greater. And all we need to do is get our stuff together. Work a little bit harder and recognize my Yetzer Hara is my best friend in the world. He's really my best friend. He kind of gives me a wink because more often than not, he gets me to do stuff that I shouldn't be doing. But he's really my best friend in the world, because if I could conquer him, which I can, and if I could overcome him, which I can, that's when I encounter my greatest self. We'll say an incredible Gemara. Incredible Gemara. We'll say.
That was incredible. Yes.
Just take it in. Just take in where we are. You know, all of us are following the news. And it feels like a little bit that it's going to be a little bit of a week of heartbreak. And it feels like there are overwhelming circumstances that are about to drop upon our people. And I will say that's why we have to mechazek ourselves. It's not just the Yetzer Hara that seeks to derail us. It's our enemies. It's sadness, right? Like Rabbi Nachman says, the greatest challenge in life that we face is sadness. Because when a yid feels sad, that's when you lose yourself in the pain and you lose yourself in the despair. And that's Rabbi Nachman says, mitzvah gedola lios besimcha tamid. And whatever it is, whether it's Yeshua's and Nechamas, or whether it's Levayos, whether it's besuros, tovos, or whether chas v'shalom, it's nichum avelim, whatever it is, we got it. And whatever it is, we're going to get through it. And whatever it is, the power of the Yid is always the ability to utilize our circumstances to always become something greater. And if we are here in Eretz Yisrael at this incredible tumultuous time, like we said yesterday at the airport, it means we have something to receive, we have something to get, but we also have something tremendous to give. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara. What happens? Good. So the Gemara said, good. Omri. So Chazal said like this. Hoil veis ratzonu. So now that we see that this is an eis ratzon. Now what does it mean it's an eis ratzon? Now Chazal said like this. Now we recognize that obviously this is an auspicious time. Right? Why is it an auspicious time? Because I'll say, I just want to say, does everyone understand what just happened over here? What just happened in this story? The Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah was just removed. That's what happened. So that's why, by the way, when we look at these Avodah Zarah Gemaras and we're like, what's wrong with these people? Why are they running to worship everything? We can't relate to it because the Yetzer Hara for this Avodah Zarah was removed from us. That's the Ochap, it was removed. So that's why we can't relate to it in the same way. So now Chazal said, okay, we're on a roll. We got this. So they said, now that we removed the Avodah Zarah, let's go. Let's do this. Let's remove immorality. Right? Why not? We're on a roll. Right? Let's remove the Yetzer Hara for immorality from us as well. So what happened? The Gemara says, so they did so. So we'll say, so what happened? So they did it. And they were successful. They removed the Yetzer Hara for immorality from the world. Only one problem. So the Gemara says, Chavshu Tilson Yomi, Iboy be'asa bas yoma lechola v'lo ashkechu. So here was the issue. The problem is, once they removed the desire for immorality, I will say, that took out all kinds of desire, just basic desire, also for just reproduction, procreation. They couldn't find a chicken that was willing to lay an egg. See how I say? That's what he said. Remember again, all of these pushes and pulls and all of these, I will say, understand, immorality is a corruption of a natural desire for intimacy, a natural desire for reproduction. So when you take that out of the world, it's true, you take away the negative stuff, but you also remove all of the positive as well. So they could not find an egg. I will say, can you imagine a couple minutes you're going to breakfast and you can't find eggs? The sky's falling after that. I will say, so again, they couldn't find an egg. So the Gemara says, so what should we do? So the Gemara says, so what should we do? To have half of the Yetzer removed from us? That's not going to work, right? That's not going to work because, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't remove half of the Yetzer. Now, listen, this is interesting. What do you mean? HaKadosh Baruch Hu could do whatever he wants. Okay, he doesn't remove half of the Yetzer. Whatever. We'll come back to this in just a little bit. So the Gemara says, look here, Lahavi. Kachlinu le'inei ahani beidlo igri inshi bikravase. So what they literally, again, they blinded the eye of the Yetzer Hara for immorality, and at least it had a partial benefit. What was the partial benefit? I was saying that a person doesn't have a desire for incest. Okay, it's helpful, right? In other words, I was saying, right? So the Maisa, right? And that's so good. In other words, this is one of those things, right? We read these arayas on Yom Kippur, right? And one of the great things about the Kriyah on Yom Kippur afternoon is most of us, I think, see that Kippur, we say to ourselves, I feel like I got this one down, right? Like, in other words, like, okay, Baruch Hashem, I desire a whole bunch of stuff. Not that. So why is that? Because Chazal were successful in being able to remove at least that base of the basis level of immorality. That a person desires a whole bunch of stuff. But at least when it comes to incest, that's not something that we desire. Incredible. So we'll say, so back to Avodah Zarah. So we'll say, this is incredible. So just to understand, interestingly enough, and this goes back to what we were saying before, every Sahara that we have has the ability to derail, but also has many positive uses and applications as well. So they couldn't go ahead and remove the desire for immorality, because embedded in that is the natural and healthy and proper and kaddish desire for intimacy. But they were able to blunt it in some way to at least remove the basest urges of that immorality for incest. Okay, sorry, so we'll say there was a story of a non-Jewish woman who was very ill. Amra im tamorahi isha michalya telich v'tavo l'chol avodah zarah sheba'olam. So we'll say, so what did she do? And this is incredible. What did she do? She made a Kabbalah. Now we'll say, by the way, I just want to point out how incredible this is. You see from here again, importance of making a Kabbalah. So she made a Kabbalah. And she said, now, interesting Kabbalah. She says, if I get better, if I heal, I promise I will worship every single avodah zarah in the world. Now, wrong kind of Kabbalah, right? But definitely good intentions. Good intentions. So what happens? So the Gemara says, Baruch Hashem, so she was healed, and she ended up worshipping every single avodah zarah in the world. When she got to Baal Pa'ar, so they got to Baal Pa'ar, right? So she's making her rounds. She's making her rounds, and she says to the priest of avodah zarah, "Tell me, how do you worship this idol?" So what happens? Amrullah, they said to her, Ochlin shradin v'shosin shechar. So you eat beets and you drink beer. So apparently that's a combustible combination, right? And when you do that, this may come in handy for some, over the course of Yarchei Kallah, right? So Lamaisa again, beets and beer, and that's going to cause the bowels to move. Umasrizin befaneha. So it's interesting enough. So we spoke about Baal Pa'ar many times. So apparently, Baal Pa'ar was that you worship by defecating on the idol. So apparently, there's defecation, but like Hiddur mitzvah for Baal Pa'ar was like, what's the right lashon? Labor Day, right? When it's like Harzig and Labor Day, like when it's like a shtickle eruption, right? That's like apparently that's the Hiddur mitzvah. So again, if you could walk in there after eating beets and drinking beer and you mamish like erupt in front of the idol, that's like that's Hiddur mitzvah. So Amra. So this lady hears this, and after all of her avodah zarah journey, she says, "Mutav shetachsa ha'isha l'choya v'lo tavod avodah zarah bekach." Right? So she said, "You know what? Nah, I'm not gonna. You know what? I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna pass on this one. I'd rather get sick again, right, than have to worship avodah zarah like this." So the Gemara says, "V'lo tavod avodah zarah bekach." Atam beis Yisrael inon kain hanitzmodin l'bal. So again, so ultimately, I just want to point out. Just see, think about this. Where does a form of worship like this come from? Right? In other words, avodah zarah, you can hear it. Okay, we can't relate to it because the Yitzhara was removed from us now. But l'maisa Baal Pa'ar, out of all the avodah zarahs that we've encountered, where do you get this? As well, so I just want to point out, Rabbi Soloveitchik makes an interesting observation. Rabbi Soloveitchik says, it's not so crazy. We say a bracha after we use the bathroom. Right? We say the bracha of Asher Yatzar. Why? Because we recognize the godliness in the ability for the body to work the right way. When a person goes and uses the bathroom, we recognize, again, if something that's open closes up, Dr. Rosenblum, right? Something that's open closes up. Something that's closed opens up, right? It's as simple as that. If something's supposed to be open and it's closed, something that's closed and opened, all Gehenna breaks loose, right? So Lamaisa, again, we also make a bracha. So again, avodah zarah, will say, if you notice, by the way, every single avodah zarah really is a very nuanced corruption of actually some important yisod that we have in Yiddishkeit. But at the end of the day, the woman says, like, you know what, I'm not doing this. The Gemara says, Atem beis Yisrael eno kain hanitzmoden l'Baal Pa'ar kitzemed pasil v'atem hadvekim Hashem Elokeichem kishtei tamaros hadvukos zu bazu. So we'll say, so again, but you Klal Yisrael are not like that. Rather, again, even though you worship the Avodah Zarah, ultimately, again, you weren't so attached, right? You were just generally attached to Baal Pa'ar. But when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, we cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu like two dates, Shiva Saminim, like two dates that cling to each other as well. Nisatana hanitzbadel ba'par kitzamid ayidei isha v'atem advikim b'Hashem Elokechem dvukim mamash. Shabbos say here, what the Gemara is trying to show is like this: even when Klal Yisrael worshipped idolatry, we were never fully bought in. Never fully bought in. We were attached, like a woman wears a bracelet, so the bracelet is on her wrist. It's on her, right? But it's not firmly attached. So that was like Klal Yisrael with Avodah Zarah. In other words, so we're there, where we're doing it, but yeah, when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'atem hadveikim, we cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You see, I want to say, even when a Yid worships Avodah Zarah, and even when a Yid goes off the straight and narrow, at the end of the day, whatever else we're doing, we're kind of only dabbling in it. Our dveikus, our clinging, our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always the primary part of our relationship. Incredible. Tana Rabbanon, Maisa Besafta ben Elam. This is a person's name. There was a guy by the name of Safta ben Elam. Shehiskir Chamoro Lech. He rented out his donkey to a non-Jewish woman. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol niyeh b'dvaro. Kevan she'agiya lepar. So he rented out his donkey. So what happens? So the lady's traveling. She gets to Baal Pa'ar. Amrlo, she said to him, Hamtein ad she'karnes ve'etzei. Ad she'karnes ve'etzei. So she says, you know what, I want to make a detour. I want to worship some Pa'ar on the way. Right? So just wait for me over here. Okay. Amrlo. So she goes in, she comes out. Then the Jewish guy who's leading the donkey, he says, Af'at hamtini ad she'karnes ve'etzei. So he says to her, you know what, you went into bar, let me make a quick pit stop. By Pa'ar also. Right? What happened? So she says to him, V'lo Yehudiato? She says to the guy, to the donkey driver, aren't you a Yid? Sibbo says sometimes we need other people to remind us. V'lo Yehudiato, aren't you a Yid? How are you worshipping Baal Pa'ar? So he says to Amrullah, Uma ichpas leich, mind your business. Right? So what does it matter to you? So we'll say, watch this. Nichnas, Pa'ar b'fanav. So we'll say, so what happened? The Jew goes in, he does his business, right? Baal Pa'ar, defecates on the idol, but listen to this, he had an interesting kunz. V'kinoch b'chotmo. Then I will say, okay, he wiped himself on the nose of the Avodah Zarah. Right? So again, a little hidden mitzvah over here. Now I will say, now b'pashtos, he was actually trying to do something disrespectful to the idol. V'hayim misharse Avodah Zarah mekalsim of omrim. Me'olam lo haya adam she'avdal zobekach. And what happens? The priests of Pa'ar are there, and they're like, oh, mamish, look at this guy. We've never seen someone who has worshipped the idol with such zrizos, such amkos, right? Such islavos. He wiped himself on the nose of the Yekaskalan residents over here, right? Right? Let me say, they could not believe what they were seeing in front of their eyes. Incredible. Hapor atzal ba'par harei zavodaso. So we'll say now, based on this, the Gemara says that, so apparently, this Jew was actually trying to debase the Baal Pa'ar. But the Gemara says it doesn't work, because again, if you defecate on Pa'ar, even though your intention is to debase the idol, but because that is the mode of worship, you're chayav for Avodah Zarah. So you can't do that. Similarly again, Hazorik Evan Markelis, Hareza Avodaso, Afagav the Mechavi in the Mirgame. So for example, say the Markelis. How do you worship Markelis? You throw a stone at it. So if you throw a stone at Markelis, but your intention is to debase the idol, so Lamaisa, again, you're still chayav for that, because that is the mode of worship. Rav Menashe have a Ka'azil Beit Torsa, Amr La Avodah Hu Dekai Hacha. So what happened? Rav Menashe one time went to Bar Tarsa. They told him, oh, there's an Avodah Zarah here. So what did he do? Shakal Pisa Shadabe. He took a clod of earth and he threw it at the idol. Amrlo Markelusu. So they said to Rav Menashe, it's Markelus. You just threw a stone at Markelus. Now again, Rav Menashe's intention was what? To debase the idol. But it turned out that what did he do? He actually worshipped it. I mean, not intentionally, but he worshipped it. Amrlohu Hazarek Evan Markelus Tanan. Atas Asa Shalbe Midrasha. So Rav Menashe ran to the base manager. So what should I do? Amrlo Hazarek Evan Markelus Tanan. Afagav the Mechav Lamirgame. Menashe, you're like a shtigl in trouble over here, because Lamaisa, we understand your intention was to debase the idol, but Lamaisa, at the end of the day, you went ahead and you worshipped it. Amar lahu ezel ishkale. He said, okay, no problem, I'll go back and I'll remove the stone. I'll remove the stone that I threw. So Amrle echad hanotla ve'echad hanos nechayiv kol chada v'chada ravcha lechaver tashavik. No. You can't remove stones to markelis either. Because if you remove stones to markelis, then what? Then lemaisa, if you remove it, you make room for more. So apparently part of the avoda of markelis was to throw the stone, and then again after a certain point, the stones accumulate. So removal of the stones is also part of the avoda zara. So you can't do that as Rabbosai. So what do you see here? What's the most skill in this? What's the most skill? Be careful when you throw stones, because sometimes once you throw stones, it's a little bit difficult to take them back. I will say, and again, the sugya, kind of how we began and how we ended was the same way. Elio, what is Elio called? Elio was called the Elio at Tzaddik. Why is he called the Tzaddik? Because the greatest tzidkus is when you reach out to your fellow Jew. How does the sugya end? Be careful when you throw stones, because I will say at the end of the day, when you throw stones, you often can't take them back. Once it's thrown, it's done. I will say, I'm sure everyone picked up on yesterday by Rav Asher Weiss. Again, clearly he has his feelings about, certain segments of Kallah Yisrael not saying Tilim after davening, or perhaps not having the right empathy for the hostages, or for the soldiers, or for the war. And I will say, but in general, you have to be careful about the stones that you throw, whether they be actual stones or verbal stones. Because once you throw it, and once you say it, it's virtually impossible to walk it back. Like Shlomo Melech says, what's the lashon of the pasuk? The shloch avonim v'leis liknos avon. I forgot the exact lashon in Koheles, but Shlomo Melech has this lashon as well. There's a time to throw stones and there's a time to collect stones. Be careful with how you throw the stones, whether actual or verbal, because once you throw it, you often can't take it back. Incredible. Mishnah. Hanosim mizar l'molech. So let's go back to just for a few more minutes. Hanosim mizar l'molech. So we'll say a person gives now again new avodah zara, molech. Molech, I will say, was child sacrifice. So now again we're going to get into it over here. A person gives over his children to molech. Eno chayiv ad shimsor lemolech v'yavir ba'esh. You're only chayiv until a person gives their children literally over to the priests of molech and walks them in the fire. Masal molech v'lo hera ba'esh. If a person gave their child over to molech, but the child wasn't walked through the fire, or havir be'esh v'lo masal molech, or it was given over through fire, but wasn't given over to the priests. So what's the halacha? Eno chayiv ad shimsor lemolech v'yavir ba'esh. So we'll say, so apparently, in order to be in violation of molech, you need three things. Number one, molech was done with children. Number two, you have to give over to the priests of molech. And number three, the child has to be walked through the fire. Now, again, the exact process we'll see in the Gemara. Katani avodah zara, katani molech. So it's interesting, I will say, because on one hand, we talked about avodah zara, and now molech is being singled out. So why is that? The Gemara says, Amar avin tonight command Amar molech lav avodah zarahi. It's coming to teach us that molech is not avodah zara. I will say now what does that mean? Yisanya, echad lemolech ve'echad l'shar avodah zara, chayiv. So I'll say, interestingly enough, so whether a person gave his child over to a molech or to a different avodah zara, he's going to be chayiv. Rabbi Shimon Omer, lemolech chayiv, shelo lemolech pater. So we'll say, what the Mishnah is really highlighting is like this. The only time that giving over one's child is a form of avodah zara is dafka for molech. So giving over one child over, let's say, to Baal Pa'ar, that's not called avodah zara, because that's not the way that the particular idol is worshipped. Amr Abaye, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus, Amru Davar Echad. Rabbi Shimon Hada Amr. So Rabbi Shimon, that's what we just said before. Then, namely, again, molech is unique. Molech is a unique avodah zara that is worshipped through giving over of one's children. If a person gives over their child to any other idol, certainly not good, right? But Lamaisa, that's not avodah zara. Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus, the sign of Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus, Omer, Nipnei ma tafsa Torah lashon molech. Why does Torah use lashon molech? What is molech? What does molech mean? So the Gemara says, Kol shimlichu aleim afilu tzrar va'afilu kisem. They will say, so one violates molech if by going in and accepting anything upon themselves as a deity. So we'll say this is a different understanding. But Chanina ben Antigonus has a different understanding of molech. his understanding of molech is if you accept any object as a god, like melech, upon you, that is the avodah zara of molech. Even a tzura, even a pebble, even a twig. Rava Amar molech arai ikabenai. Rava says in reality, whether or not there's such a thing as what we call a temporary or episodic molech is the point of contention between them. When it comes to molech, I will say one is only chayiv if he gives his child over to the actual attendants, right, to the priests of molech. In other words, I will say there's a process. So let's say if a person just gives their kid over to molech, that's not the avodah zara. It's giving your kid over to the priests of molech for avodah zara. Shneimar mizaracha lo sitein lahabir lamolech. Tainam Yaakov Brisa supports this. Yochel haber v'lo maser. You might have thought that ultimately, if one passed his child through the fires of molech, but didn't actually give his child over to the priests of molech, that he would be chayiv. Talmud lomar lo sitein maser lamolech. You have to give over your kids to the priests. But lo haber yochel yechayiv. What happens if you gave over your child, but he didn't actually pass him through the fires? Maybe you think that he'd be chayiv. Talmud lomar lahavir maser v'haver shalom lamolech yachol yechayiv. You might have thought that Allah may say if you give over your child to the priests and they pass him through the fire, but not from molech, that you be chayiv. Talmud lomar lemolech maser v'haver lemolech v'lo beish. What happens if you gave over your child to the priests, but he passed them through, but not through fire? You'd be chayiv. Yachol yechayiv. Nemar kan lahavir v'nemar lahalon v'nemar lahalon lo yimatze b'cham mavir b'no bito beish. Ma lahalon beish af kan beish u'ma kan molech af lahalon molech. So I'll say, so bottom line, what the Gemara just taught us is, in order to be chayiv for giving your child over to molech, you need three components. Number one, have to give over to the priests of molech. That's number one. Number two, ultimately, again, there has to be fire involved. And number three, the child actually has to be walked through the fire. Now, what that actually walking through fire actually looks like, in Meretz Hashem, we'll see in a little bit. Am Rav Acha B'Rabba. Heavier called Zaro Potter. We'll say, if you passed all of your children through molech, you're potter. Why? Shene'emar mizaracha. Because the lashon of the pasuk is ultimately, again, you pass your child or from amongst your offspring, not all of your offspring. V'lo kol zaracha. Rashi said, Havira suma mahu. What happens ultimately, again, if a person went ahead and has a child who's blind, and they passed their child who's blind through the fires of molech? What's the halacha? Or yashin mahu. What happens if the child is asleep? So I will say, so again, in these situations, the child is not aware of what it is that's occurring. They're blind, they're asleep. Are you chayiv from molech mahu? Ben beno, ben bito mahu. What happens if you pass your grandchildren through molech? What's the halacha? So tifshat miachada, we can answer at least one of these. Disanya ki mizaro nasan lamolech. The pasuk says you give up your offspring to molech. Matam olomar. Abba said, what do we learn from this? Lefish ne'emar lo yimatze b'cham mavir b'no bito ba'eish. Ainli ella b'no ubito. I only know son and daughter. Ben b'no ben bito minayin. How do we know even grandson or granddaughter? Talmud lomar besito mizaro. So Abba said, we see from here that if you give any of your offspring, whether it's your children or your grandchildren, halacha l'maisa, again you're chayiv from molech. Tana. Pasach bechiz mizaro, besalek besito mizaro, joshach v'inahu. So also, the Gemara says it begins with kizaro and it begins ultimately besito mizaro. Different drasha, which we'll see. Zaro, aimli ever zera kosher. So we'll say the pasuk tells me zara. I only know that you're chayiv for kosher offspring. Zera pasal minol. And how do I know that even if a person passes his invalid offspring through molech, that he's still going to be chayiv? Tamlomar besito mizaro. Okay. Rav Yehuda, enu chayiv ad sheyavirenu derech ha'avara. So Rav Yehuda says like this: you're only chayiv. We'll say if what? If you go ahead and you pass your children through derech ha'avara. Well, so, actually, what we're going to do is we'll stop over here for today. So this next sugya, ultimately again teaches us how molech was actually done, how he went ahead and it was passed through the fire. Shabbos say Meretz Hashem, and again, hopefully tomorrow Meretz will have a little bit more time in Meretz Hashem to be able to go through the daf. We're also going to learn more today. We're not finished, so also if you want, you can take your packets with you. We still have to get in some tzidkas hatzadik in Meretz Hashem today, so we'll do that hopefully in the Beis Medrash in Sderot a little bit. And again, use this time. Usually when it comes to Daf Yomi, we usually don't have a lot of time to be able to chazer. But now that we're in Yarchei Kallah, there's an opportunity to chazer the daf, especially tremendous yisodos from today's daf, even more that Amir, and we'll get to in further stops. Tremendous chusar with all the Yerushalayim breakfast. And I guess, is Zevi here? He's outside. Okay. But I think our goal in Meretz Hashem is to leave at what time? 8:30. Okay. So breakfast, Meretz Hashem. Stay tuned. If anyone needs a booklet, one of the packets.
Yeah, sure.